She trusted too much, loved without limits, gave herself completely. And when everything seemed to be going right, the truth came like a blade. Love to Start Over is a story with so many twists that you'll doubt everything, even love. And the ending? It's not for just any heart. If you love stories with twists and endings that do justice, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment at the end what you would have done in her place. Ready for this intense journey? When Ellie moved to Chicago, all she wanted was to start over. She was leaving behind a toxic relationship, a small town where everyone knew her life, and the remnants of a mother who never accepted who she was. At 32, she felt like she was starting from scratch, but with the courage of someone who had already faced the worst. All she needed was a little peace, and maybe, who knows, a little love. She rented a small apartment in the Andersonville neighborhood, known for its vibrant and welcoming LGBTQIA+ community. Working as a florist in a charming shop on Clark Street, Ellie quickly won the affection of her customers. She smiled with her eyes, offered flowers with her heart, and listened to strangers' stories as if they were old friends. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was part of something. But there was still a void, the kind of silence that only love can fill. It was on a rainy March afternoon that she met Harper, a mysterious woman with an intense gaze, a soft voice, and that kind of presence that stops time. Harper entered the shop looking for flowers for her aunt's funeral and left with much more than a bouquet. Ellie didn't know it, but that encounter was the beginning of a plot that would change everything. A story that would start with desire and end in revenge. In the following days, Harper returned to the shop frequently, always with a new reason: a vase, a rare orchid, a thank you card. But what was blooming there was much more than plants. Harper listened to Ellie attentively, gently touched her arm, asked deep questions. It was the kind of attention Ellie had never felt before. In just a few weeks, they were inseparable, and Ellie, inevitably, was in love. But what Ellie didn't know, what no one could imagine, was that Harper hadn't appeared in her life by chance. None of it was a coincidence. And behind every affectionate gesture, there was a hidden reason. An old story, a wound still open, and a carefully crafted plan to look like love until it was too late. The first great conflict. Ellie was completely invested. In less than 2 months, she and Harper were already sharing nights, breakfasts, and even dreams. It was as if Harper had been made just for her. Ellie, who had always struggled to trust, now left the house key on the table, offering her heart without reservations. But it was precisely at this moment of vulnerability that the small cracks began to appear. It all started with one detail: a call from Harper answered hastily, whispering something incomprehensible before leaving to take care of something urgent. Wow, that day she didn't return to sleep. Ellie spent the night awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to shake the feeling that something was wrong. And deep down, she knew love doesn't just disappear like that, unless it came from nowhere too. The next day, Harper returned with flowers and apologies. She said a cousin had a nervous breakdown. She cried, asked for forgiveness, spoke about old traumas. And Ellie, with her soft heart, believed her. Because love sometimes needs faith, and because those who have been hurt too much in the past have the cruel habit of doubting their own intuition. But that was just the first time Harper disappeared without explanation. Without realizing it, Ellie began to change. Once smiling and confident, now she walked with uncertainty, checked her phone compulsively, and interpreted every silence as a threat. Even so, Harper knew how to win her back. A candlelit dinner, an impromptu dance in the living room, a note hidden among the flowers in the shop. Harper was too perfect to be real, and that was exactly what made her so dangerous. The tipping point came on a Friday night. Ellie found a hotel receipt in the pocket of Harper's jacket. The date matched one of the nights when Harper had gone to help her cousin. Ellie froze. She felt the ground disappear beneath her. But instead of confronting Harper, she tucked the paper in a drawer, and an idea in her mind. Maybe, for the first time, it was time not to react with the heart, but with strategy. She thought she was being loved, but she was just being manipulated. And now, Ellie was beginning to prepare herself, not for the end of the relationship, but for the start of her own turnaround. First attempt at a solution. From that day on, Ellie began to observe Harper with new eyes. Every excuse turned into a clue. Every absence became an opportunity to investigate. She knew something was wrong, but she couldn't quite name it. So, she started piecing together her own puzzle. She made copies of messages, saved audios, and even took photos of documents she found around the house. Ellie didn't want revenge. Not yet. She wanted the truth. That was how she discovered the first false name. On a document forgotten in Harper's backpack, it said Heather Rowe. With that name, Ellie found an old profile on an abandoned social network. The photos showed Harper, with a different look, a different style, different social circles. In one of the posts, there was a curious comment. "Watch out for her. She seems perfect until you discover who she really is." The phrase kept echoing in Ellie's mind like a siren. She then searched through public records. She discovered that Harper, or Heather, had a history. An ex-boyfriend who had filed a police report for fraud. A woman who claimed to have been emotionally and financially manipulated. Different names, different states, but the same pattern. Harper was a love artist, an architect of relationships that began with promises and ended in ruin. Instead of running away, Ellie took a deep breath and decided to continue playing the game. But on her terms, she went back to smiling, showing affection, complimenting Harper as if nothing had happened. She created a hidden diary where she wrote down everything she discovered. And little by little, she wasn't just piecing together the puzzle of the lie, she was forming a plan. Ellie was no longer the woman who came to Chicago fleeing her past. She had changed, and she knew that if she truly wanted to start over, she would have to end this chapter firmly. But before that, she wanted Harper to feel it, every step, every loss, every fear, exactly how Ellie had felt. Ellie discovered the truth, but decided not to escape, because now she was. The problem gets even worse. In the days following the discovery of the false name, Ellie dug even deeper into the investigation. She spent nights scouring forums, old social networks, and even court records from other states. More and more, she found patterns, relationships that began with intense emotional promises and ended with losses, financial, emotional, even legal. Harper was more than just a typical manipulator. She was meticulous, charismatic, and lethal in the way she seduced. Ellie realized that she could be just another victim, or perhaps the last. Harper, for her part, seemed even more affectionate. She started suggesting that they move in together, talked about marriage, and even mentioned wanting to start a business with Ellie, a new flower shop in another neighborhood. It was as if she were rushing the future, wanting to solidify that bond before any truth came to light. Ellie, now a born actress, feigned enthusiasm while, on the inside, she coldly mapped out the contours of the trap. that would turn the tables. One night, Harper left saying she was going to Milwaukee to handle matters with a sick uncle. Ellie, skillful, waited 3 hours before calling the hotel in the city where Harper said she was staying. There was no one with that name registered. With her heart racing and her hands cold, Ellie made a decision. She followed Harper's phone's location history, which she had secretly synced days before, and she found what she didn't want to see. Harper was at a luxury condo in downtown Chicago, in another woman's apartment. For the first time, Ellie felt hatred, not anger, not sadness, hatred. But she kept her composure. She went home, wrote everything in her journal, and instead of crying, she smiled. For the first time, she understood the game, and she decided to play it to the end. The next morning, Ellie showed up at home with coffee, flowers, and a kiss on the cheek. Harper, as always, smiled tenderly. This was no longer a relationship. It was a cold war, silent, careful, and increasingly dangerous. When the truth comes out, some people run, and some turn pain into strategy. Ellie now has a target, a plan, and no mercy. The first great twist. Ellie's plan started with small gestures. First, she copied every personal document of Harper's she could find: ID, contracts, email copies. Then, she began reaching out discreetly to people from Harper's past. She created a fake profile, posed as an investigative journalist, and started listening. What she uncovered was a trail of emotional destruction. Ruined women, bankrupt men, endless lawsuits. But what surprised her the most was one detail. Harper had been married, and the divorce had been silenced by a confidential settlement. Ellie managed to contact the ex-wife, who initially refused to talk. But after a few messages and a sincere call, the woman broke down. She told everything. That Harper was not just a manipulator, but a controlling sociopath with a history of emotional blackmail, financial manipulation, and even stalking. Ellie knew she needed proof, so she bought a small recorder hidden in a pendant and began recording conversations with Harper. One of those nights, she subtly provoked her partner with questions about the ex, about money, about what they would do if Ellie decided to disappear. Harper laughed, but the response was chilling. "You would never leave here without me. I know you too well to let that happen." That was enough to trigger all of Ellie's internal alarms. In the same week, Ellie reached out to a lawyer who was a friend of the shop, explained the situation, and began building a dossier. The goal was not just to escape unscathed. It was to make Harper pay, not only with the truth, but with her reputation, her resources, her very name. Ellie wanted justice, but she also wanted Harper to taste the bitter sting of being forgotten, of shame, of loss. Exactly how she had caused so much pain for so many others. Ellie left clues for Harper. A sealed envelope, purposely left in the car, with printed excerpts of old conversation screenshots. An anonymous note in the mail, with the phrase, "You think you're in control, but control has already changed hands." Harper began to grow uneasy, tense, nervous, and for the first time, scared. Now the game had changed. Ellie didn't just want justice. She wanted Harper to feel every inch of the abyss she had dug. The illusion of victory. With Harper growing more suspicious, Ellie decided to make the final move of trust. She officially accepted the proposal to open a business together, the The two started planning the new flower shop in an upscale neighborhood of the city. Harper seemed ecstatic, and Ellie feigned enthusiasm perfectly. The contracts were being drafted, the initial investment was transferred, and everything, carefully, was recorded by Ellie. But the sense of victory Ellie felt was dangerous. Inside, she began to feel in control. Strong, finally on top. But that kind of feeling can be deceptive. One night, Harper came home early and found Ellie rummaging through a drawer where she kept documents. For a moment, the two stared at each other in silence. Ellie smiled and said she was looking for the flower shop contract. Harper smiled back, but something in her gaze changed. That night, Harper became cold, distant, observant. Ellie realized too late that she had crossed a line, that Harper, even without proof, now saw her as a threat. And when a manipulator feels threatened, they strike. Days later, the joint bank account was emptied, the flower shop contract disappeared, and the website with the dossier Ellie had prepared was hacked and taken down. Desperate, Ellie ran to the lawyer, but realized that Harper had used a fake name even on the signed papers. Nothing was in her real name. Nothing was traceable. Nothing could be used in court without raising suspicions against Ellie herself. She had fallen into Harper's trap, and now it seemed as though all her plans had been undone with a single move. However, even in that moment of loss, Ellie refused to give up. She was no longer the naive woman who sought to start over. She was now someone hungry for justice, and if she had to fall deeper to rise stronger, she would fall. The darkest moment. That week, everything collapsed. Ellie lost control of almost everything she had built. The finances were compromised. The shop where she worked underwent a surprise audit, yet another move by Harper. And, as if that weren't enough, Ellie's phone was hacked. Intimate messages, emails with the lawyer, investigation records. Everything was gone. For the first time, she felt she could truly lose this war. Fear became a constant presence in her days. Harper, now fully in predator mode, began to treat Ellie with a mixture of coldness and false sweetness. She knew that Ellie knew, but pretended ignorance. It was like dancing with a snake. Every misstep could be fatal. Ellie began to sleep poorly, lose weight, and isolate herself from her friends. She felt watched, followed, and maybe she was. Her routine became a minefield. Every move could be used against her. It was as if she were trapped in a maze created by Harper, with no way out in sight. It was then that Ellie did what she never thought she'd do. She called her mother. Years without contact, deep wounds, silences that hurt more than words. But at that moment, Ellie needed an emotional anchor. The conversation was short, tense, but sincere. For the first time, her mother truly listened, really listened, to everything Ellie was facing. And though reluctant, she offered help. A shelter outside the city, a chance to breathe, and a phrase Ellie would never forget. You don't need to win now, you just need to survive to win later. That night changed everything. Ellie remembered who she was before Harper. A woman with strength, with a voice, with courage. She decided to disappear for a while. She vanished from social media, sold the car, quit her job at the shop, and went to live with her mother in a small town, leaving no trace behind. It was there, in the silence of rebuilding, that she began to be reborn. Every day was a battle against fear, but also a step toward clarity. In the solitude of that refuge, Ellie returned to her journal, reorganized documents, re-established contacts, and recovered some of the lost files. She didn't know how long it would take, but she was certain of one thing: Harper would not go unpunished. And if she had to wait months or years, she would wait. Because now, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about freedom, about doing what was right for herself and for all the others Harper had destroyed. When everything seems lost, the most dangerous version of someone is born, the one who has nothing left to lose. Ellie is back, and this time invisible. The unexpected turn. Months passed. Ellie, now living under another name, had built a simple but solid life. She worked at a discreet flower shop, made new friends, and kept in touch with the lawyer through secure channels. Slowly, her confidence returned. Her mind was sharp, her heart armored. But nothing could extinguish the flame of justice burning inside her. And that was why, when she came across a familiar name in an online ad, Heather Rowe, image consultant, she knew it was time. Heather, or Harper, had moved to another city again and created yet another identity, but the pattern was the same. Impeccable appearance, seductive smile, and a new potential victim. Ellie, more prepared than ever, began to approach discreetly. She created a new profile, infiltrated groups where Harper participated, attended events where she appeared. And when Ellie realized that Harper was getting involved with a wealthy widow named Caroline, she saw her chance. She approached Caroline cautiously. First, as a customer at her antique store, then as a friend. The two connected naturally, and Ellie, without revealing her story, began to plant seeds of doubt about Harper. Small questions, subtle suggestions, phrases like, "She reminds me of someone I once knew. She was charming until she wasn't anymore." Caroline initially resisted, but it only took Ellie showing one of the old reports she had recovered, with names, dates, cases, and victims, for everything to change. Caroline confronted Harper. The argument was violent, emotional, and ended with Harper being kicked out of the house in the middle of the night. Ellie watched from a distance, not with pleasure, but with resolve. That woman who once made her doubt herself now had nowhere to hide. And Caroline, shaken by the revelation, teamed up with Ellie to formally report Harper, using new documents and the testimony of other victims Ellie had helped find. The story gained momentum. A local feminist blog published a complete dossier with details of Harper's actions over the years. The post went viral. Other women came forward. Social media exploded. And finally, Harper's name, or Heather's, became a symbol of warning. Ellie didn't celebrate. She simply took a deep breath. She felt that, at last, she had closed a chapter. When Harper fell, Ellie didn't smile, because those who survive the chaos don't celebrate the fall. They simply recognize that they have won. The aftermath was devastating for Harper. Her new identity was exposed. The forged contracts she had created were placed under federal investigation. Caroline, with financial power, pushed the case into the courts with force. Ellie, even from a distance, was called as a key witness in the trial. For the first time, she sat before judges and told everything, in detail, with evidence, and with the firmness of someone who no longer carried fear. Harper tried to retaliate. She sent veiled threats via email, tried to defame Ellie online, but nothing stuck. Because now, Ellie was no longer alone. Her support network was strong. made up of women who had also suffered at the hands of that same predator. They became a united front, a living force, a collective voice saying, "Enough." During the trial, Harper maintained her composure. She tried to seduce even the courtroom with her sweet speech and controlled appearance, but it only took Ellie showing the recorded audios, the old emails, the screenshots, and Harper's expression changed. For the first time, the court saw who she really was. Not a victim, but a professional in the art of destruction. The judge ruled Harper could no longer engage in any business activities without legal supervision. Financial lawsuits began to pile up. And without resources and a public image, she found herself isolated. The face that once charmed now appeared with warning signs online. The woman who deceived was now exposed. Ellie, on the other hand, did not return to the city. She chose to continue her life in silence. She created a small channel where she shared real stories of emotional survival, always using fictitious names and narrated voices. She never revealed that it was about her. But with each video, she left a phrase at the end. Surviving is just the beginning. Living after this is revenge. Ellie won without shouting, without applause. But the whole world heard the echo of her victory and of Harper's end. Months passed since the end of the trial. Ellie kept her routine simple, watering flowers in the morning and responding to loving messages from subscribers at night. Her channel had become a space for support and courage, where stories once silenced finally found their voice. She never mentioned names, never said it was about her. But those who paid attention felt it in the pauses, in the subtext, in the tone. On a sunny October afternoon, she received an unexpected message. One of the women she had helped was starting her life anew in another city and thanked her for everything. Ellie smiled. She realized that, in the end, her revenge wasn't an act of destruction, but of reconstruction. Each woman who freed herself from Harper's shadow was a victory, and every story shared on the channel was a reminder that trauma doesn't define the end, only the beginning. Ellie began writing a book. She called it Flowers Growing from Concrete. In it, she mixed fiction and reality, pain and overcoming. It was a way to eternalize what she had lived, but also to transform suffering into something useful, something that could inspire others. Writing became therapy, liberation, healing. And with every page, she left a piece of the past behind and made space for a light future, though full of scars. One evening, walking along the shoreline of a new city where she had chosen to live, Ellie saw two women holding hands, laughing as if they had no fear of simply being. She didn't cry. She smiled, because she understood that loving wasn't the mistake. The mistake was believing she needed to erase herself to be loved. Today, she knew, true love doesn't demand the sacrifice of identity. It blooms where there is truth, respect, and reciprocity. In the final minutes of the video, the screen fades to black. Ellie's voice narrates one last reflection. Sometimes, starting over isn't about running away. It's about returning to yourself, about remembering that even when the world breaks you, you can still bloom with deeper roots and stronger petals. The video ends with an image of a flower blooming over cracked concrete, and the most powerful silence of all, that of piece one. Life isn't fair, but it can be transformative. And sometimes, it's in the shards of a broken heart that we build the truest home we'll ever inhabit, ourselves. Have you ever lived through something Like this? Share your story in the comments. Your story might be someone's new beginning.